Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. This is Jonathan. You can see I have Stephanie Joy with me, one of my regular guests.
Hey, all.
And Stephanie is a disability attorney, and we talk a good bit and kind of bounce ideas off each other. And I know a number of the people on the live stream have worked with her or know her work. So we have a good time just kind of bouncing ideas off and answering questions. So, Steph, how you doing? Everything going okay tonight?
Everything's great. It's been a long day.
Yeah, it's been a long day. Yeah, I hear you.
Yep.
By the way, last week, I think as I told you, I was talking to myself for about 20 minutes because the microphone was not working. So, like Vince, so make sure everybody, if you're leaving a comment, look at the most recent ones, confirm you can hear us because I want to make sure that we're good. So I want to, before I start answering questions, I want to make sure everybody can hear us okay, because that was a little bit embarrassing. So
I've been there.
Yeah. No, it's just, I've got in my computer, I have here. Okay. Yeah. In my computer, I've got a bunch of different, I don't know where they all came from. All these sort of, they're like audio inputs. I'm not sure where they all came from, but I got to get rid of some of them. I just don't know how to do it. So last time I didn't choose the right one. So this one, I chose the right one. So it looks like we're in good shape here. So, okay.
You got to put a little color label on it.
Yeah. Well, there's they call them virtual inputs, and I'm not sure where it all came from, but I have all these virtual, inputs, and maybe it's because I've used, there's all these different programs that you can use to record videos, virtual cameras and virtual audios. And anyway, I had them in there, and I just got to figure out how to get them out. So I need to probably find an IT person who can just clear all this stuff out. I got actually a new, relatively new computer, but he just sort of copied everything from my old one and put this on this one. So it's all still there. So, it's legacy stuff. So anyway, let's jump into some of the questions. SA has looks like a 4 or 5 point question here. So let's kind of jump in. If medical records reveal a PA, physician's assistant, has input on all, 5.5 on all sensory motor tests for lumbar radiculopathy, but perform 0 tests, that be included in a letter range for request and amendment to other correct non-performance and incorrect PT PAC report. This is a pain clinic. Okay, so I kind of big picture, I think what you're asking is there is a medical report that, and I'm assuming that when you say 5.5, meaning that you have, full capacity to do certain things. And yet you're saying that there was no tests done and that this conclusion is erroneous because no tests were done. And what should you do? Steph, what would you say? What would you tell somebody to do in that situation?
Yeah, it's disturbing. I hear this a lot every day. I feel like cut and pasted, the defaults on these computerized ways they put in their records default to within normal limits, perfect, probably 5.5.
Yep.
And it's frustrating because it's inaccurate. I hate to say the word defamatory, but it kind of is, because it's false information that's going to financially damage somebody if someone were to believe it. Even though this is just one small piece of your case, you can ask for it to be fixed. I think, Jonathan, don't pretty much in every state, don't they have a right to ask it be fixed?
Yeah, I know that I've had people tell me they've contacted their doctor to say this needs to be fixed, and the doctor refuses to do so. I think SA may be suggesting, should I contact or should I write a letter to the judge or the adjudicator and let Social Security know that? And again, certainly as an attorney, if somebody tells me this is inaccurate, I would in my brief say the claimant will testify that this report is inaccurate. A lot of times a consultative evaluation,
right?
That no tests were done, that the doctor didn't touch the person or didn't do any sort of test, and they can talk about that. Realize a judge may or may not believe you.
Right.
Medical records are medical records, and judges many times will believe what the doctor says over what you say. Although again, if it's an industrial clinic type of place, you can certainly make that argument. So I think really, and I think what you said at the beginning is really important, that this is one part of a big picture. And if it's not consistent with everything else, yeah, what I would probably do is I would, in a pre-hearing brief or in a letter to an adjudicator, say, this information, I've reviewed it, this is inaccurate. I've asked the doctor to change it. The doctor will not change it. However, saying these tests are all within normal limits or 5 out of 5, there's no way, because there was no test done. And I'm disputing that. And whether they believe it or not, I can't tell you whether a judge would buy it, whether an adjudicator buys it or not. But you can certainly try to do that. And this is really, as lawyers, a lot of times, and just to kind of go broader than what we're talking about in Social Security, every case, if you go to state court or federal court, there are going to be differences of opinion, differences of fact, and a fact finder has to make the decision as to what's most accurate. So, and again, let me just throw this out as well. Maybe this person who did this PA is looking at other records. I mean, who knows where they came up with it? But I do think if you make noise about it and you object to it, both to the doctor and to the Social Security, and you send a copy of the letter from the doctor, I think that many judges would feel like, well, if you're going to go to all the effort to contest this, there must be a grain of truth there. So that's how probably I would handle it.
And it happens. I see on consultative exams sometimes my people will say, because I usually share the exam with them, most people want to see it. And I'll say, is there anything in there that is factually incorrect, not discretionarily or diagnosis or anything like that? But for instance, if they said he could do the heel to toe walk, but he was never asked actually to do the heel to toe walk, and the doctor's saying he can do it, that's kind of a false fact. You know what I mean? Right. Similarly, if he's, sometimes they'll say in the record that she can zip, button, and tie, so the hands are good. And I'll say, were you asked if you could zip, button, or tie? No. Did they have you zip, button, and tie? No. And so there was nothing that came up about it. And if it's a finger case where, I'm always big about the fingers, like it may not be your main impairment, but boy, it can really cut out a bunch of jobs if you have even minor finger arthritis or whatever, or carpal tunnel or what have you. And so when the doctor is using his canned template for these consultative exam reports, and it always says they can do this because he just never changed it and made it accurate, and never even tried. Or similarly, can hop, had no problem hopping on or climbing upon the examination table. And the person's like, he wasn't in the room when I was in there. They put me in the room and I did it myself. Like he did it himself, but it doesn't mean he didn't have a problem because there was no one there to witness.
Yeah.
So all sorts of weird things.
Just to kind of put a bow on this, because I don't want to spend too much more time on this question, but at the end of the day, the MRI report is a lot more important than what some doctor says or PA says about your ability to do heel to toe walking. So, give it the importance, the relevance that it deserves. An MRI showing a badly herniated disc with, nerve compression is going to be a lot more, relevant than, some of these neurological tests. So, all right, Christina is one of my regulars. Hello, Christina from California. She always reminds people she's head of my fan club in California. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I think she's the only one there, but I'll take it. All right, Killer of Demons. That sounds ominous. Case is still pending. The judge gave my lawyer a deadline to get my pain management records from last doc, but the doctor is still being stubborn. So my team gave the judge the insurance claim. Doubt it helps my case when the proves I went when I got. Again, you can ask the judge to issue a subpoena. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had a subpoena issued by a Social Security judge?
I have, yeah. Okay. The rub on that one though, right? With the subpoenas.
It's really not. There's no way to enforce it, right?
Like he can send the subpoena, but I'm always banking on the doctor doesn't know that, so he's not in the legal field. So I do ask for them, and I have a case right now that I might be actually asking for a subpoena from a workers' comp attorney, who has not acknowledged any request for anything from me. Kind of rude. And I thought, I might just ask the judge to subpoena that. I mean, we've kind of gotten the records in other ways, somewhat through the workers' comp carrier, who's been better. But, I just think it's kind of crazy. But considering doing it for that.
Do you ever get records? Because I know that, sometimes we'll get records from portals and you see that Lucy or that, these different things. Do you ever use those, or do you try to get the original records?
I do both. The portals you can get so much quicker.
Yep.
And they can't say no, or they don't ignore, So I always get portals, and then I often will send out requests for officials. But the judges have been getting a little hairy about duplicates. Even though they're technically not duplicates under the rules, they don't like having all that extra volume when it's the same visits.
Right.
And the problem they have with the portals is that there's like 75 pages per visit, because they repeat. The duplicative part is all that history they repeat for every visit, and you can't pull that out of Epic MyChart. Doesn't let you pull it out.
Right.
So I've had some conversations with some. It wasn't the judge this time. It was one was a judge. We were just talking off the record, and she said, just ask us for a HITMER if it's a big network. Yeah. Now that's really growing in leaps and bounds.
Yeah. What that is, by the way, HITMER stands for Health Information Technology, and it is an initiative, I guess, by the government that they get all these mostly larger hospital chains and Mayo Clinic and things like that they can get these records electronically, and it's a real time saver. Now, sometimes the format is not as easy to read as traditional medical records, but it can literally be obtained within a day. And, you can now ask the hearing office to do a HITMER request, and it will HIT-MER. HIT stands for Health Information Technology. MER, I guess, for medical evidence. I don't know what MER stands for. Medical.
Right. Yeah. Medical
evidence records or something like that. But they can get those, and that has been a really good. That's actually one area I will say. And since I've been doing this, when I started years ago, getting medical records was a real burden, because you'd have to pay for them, and they wouldn't come in. And now, between portals and HITMER and all this other stuff, it's a lot easier. The other thing that I do is, we make a real effort to have the adjudicators get the records, because now we can access what's going on in a file at initial and recon. I can see what's going on. So if I see something's missing, many times it's because the adjudicator doesn't have the right address. We'll send letters to the adjudicator saying, here's the address, get these records. And that has been, let them do that work. I mean, that's what they're paid to do.
That's what they're paid to do.
Yeah. So let them do it.
And they pay for it. So the client doesn't have
right. That's exactly right. And that way you don't have to deal with the duplication issues. And, the only time it becomes a problem is after you request a hearing and you need to update the records. You got to go make sure that you're not sending in stuff that's already there. But to me, it's like I'd rather be complete and have some duplication than not. And I get a little uncomfortable, quite frankly, pulling stuff out of a record. So if I have downloaded 45 pages and it's numbered, 1 through 45, and then I only submit pages 37 to 45, I don't want somebody.
Because it's like, I was just talking about this today. We have two conflicting rules that sometimes conflict. It's the no duplication rule, and the no cherry picking rule.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if now, I would never go and order a full, not willfully anyway, a full portal. I would see what's in the file. When was that last HITMER on that? Or but I would also ask for a HITMER. Or if it's just where they had to request them, what was their last date from that provider? And then I'll get everything. I'll limit my portal request to everything after. It's still going to be kind of voluminous if it's Epic MyChart, which is, to me, the gold standard of the companies. But they are lacking, and they really have to, I think, improve their user-friendly part of being able to pick more of just progress notes, for instance.
Yeah, I was actually talking to an adjudicator yesterday, and we were kind of discussing VA records, and she said to me, VA records are like the bane of her existence, because you'll get 1,500 pages of VA records that is just copies of copies. I mean, in that 1,500 pages, there may be 75 pages of relevant content. The rest of it is just copies and emails and all this kind of nonsense. and it's a pain in the to have to plow through. Because with the topic of my question to her, I said, well, are you using AI to go through it? And she said, well, they've got this sort of an AI program that's been it doesn't really work right and all this. So anyway, that is something that we have to deal with, and you just got to kind of know where to look in there and try to pull stuff out, because VA records are just really, really hard to work with.
It is, and we get the blue button report. Have you seen that?
I'm not familiar with that term.
It's what the patient can get. They can get their own download of, but it's the same ugly mess.
Yeah.
And it's like each line is like this far apart from the next. So what could be reasonably in one page is 10.
Yeah. It makes it interesting. All right. John Calamus says, I had my hearing today. At the end, the judge asked my height and weight. I was asked if I was agreeable to get future records and exams. Should I be worried? My attorney thought it went well. The judge asked me a lot of questions. Took about an hour. I'm 64. Had a CE in May of 24. Pointed out was favorable. The doctor was a surgeon by CE. Functional capacity, the attorney said was favorable and strong. Medical source statement. I think the ALJ was trying to cover everything. Again, I think I would just say that, and John says, continues on, updated medical records. Sorry for all the messages. No problem. I would say this, John, your attorney was there. Assuming your attorney has done this and thinks it went pretty well, the medical records are pretty good. You're 64. All those are really favorable signs. I don't never seen statistics, but I would suspect that cases for people over 60, it's much higher approval rate than cases between 40 and 50. So, if your lawyer thinks it went pretty well, judges sometimes have to cover their bases because they got to make sure that their decisions are not reversed by the next level up. I've had conversations off the record with judges. I remember I had a case not too long ago where my client, really nice guy, but really just felt like he needed to explain everything. And so I told the judge before the hearing, I said, look, my client is a legitimate, it's got significant problems, as you can see, but he feels like he needs to explain his entire life story. And, just so you're aware, I explained to him that you may cut him off, I'll cut him off. And she was appreciative. I told her that. She was like, look, I'm going to approve this case. I just got to make sure that I get everything on the record so that, I'm not reversed. So I think, judges, just like we do, you look at a case, you can see in about 2 minutes if it's viable. I think judges are probably the same way, don't you think? They know. You look at a case.
I think they have, and particularly if they know they feel strongly that it's an awarding case, they want to make sure they're not going to be reversed. That would be terrible for the claimant.
Yeah.
Plus, it probably puts a black mark on their record. I'm sure they have some sort of metrics,
Yeah.
So them crossing their T's and dotting their I's, I think, is not a bad thing.
Have you ever had cases where I've got a couple right now where we get a favorable decision, but then you see it's being reviewed by the appeals council kind of on their own? Have you had that happen?
I think so. Not often, maybe once. More so, I've seen like federal quality review at the understages. They seem to be doing a lot of that lately. But I do think it has happened because I don't think they send you the decision. They kind of hold it back, don't they?
Well, I mean, I've got one right now where I've got a favorable decision, but it's in, the money's being held up because it's in review. And
so you did get the decision.
What's going on with that? Yeah, my client's not real happy, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
And every time it's happened, they've gone ahead and approved it, but who knows? It's just, I think that there are procedures that go on sometimes that they don't have the personnel to really deal with it, and things kind of sit in limbo for a very, very long time. In fact, this adjudicator I was talking to yesterday, and I'm trying to get this person to come on as a guest, and we got to figure out the legalities of all that. But this person was telling me that in the CDRs, that they're right now, that because the fiscal year is not ended, they're not allowed to release a notice that a CDR is being, that the benefits will continue, that the CDR is going nowhere, but that if it's a termination, they can process that. But for whatever reason, they can't process the ones where the benefits will continue. So you have all these people that have been, in the CDR process for months and months and months, and they can't get a decision and will not get a written decision until after the 1st of October. Why?
So they're in the midst. So they're technically in the midst of their CDR for a very long time.
Yeah. Which, I get people, some of my older clients, and they get really concerned about this because, they get the long form and they get some notices, and then they hear nothing for months and months and months. And like, do they, go away, or are they going to come after me? I don't know. I think and again, what this person told me was that it's just a real problem with the staffing. They just don't have
right.
All right, Rodney is one of our clients. Good evening, Rodney. Okay, let's see what we got here. Thomas Rowinski. Hope I'm well. I'm well. My question relates to inheritance. When my mother passed, I received an inheritance. Does it affect your SSDI? No. It would affect your SSI potentially, but not your SSDI. So, okay, you got some doggies in the background. I can see.
Yeah. You can see them floating around. Huh?
Yeah. No, I can't.
The kids just came up.
My golden doodle one time was here with me, and she kept wanting to play. I'm like, no, we're keeping you upstairs. My wife took her for like a 6-mile walk, so I think she's probably plotzing on the floor upstairs. So
yeah, I got one at my feet still, but the other one left.
Okay. All right. Eunice said some very nice things here. Tom, which one is more important? Are they both the same for VE or medical qualifications? How would you handle if medical passes and VE failed, or the other way around? I'm not sure do you understand what Tom is asking?
Which ones are important, or are they the same? Are they both the same for VE or medical qualifications? How would you handle if medical passes and VE failed? Yeah, I don't really know what that means.
I mean, realize that, and this is let me just throw this out. There is a term you may hear in the Social Security world called residual functional capacity, and a lot of attorneys call the forms RFC forms. That's technically not accurate, because residual functional capacity is a legal conclusion about what your capacity is that is left over, residual, after you factor in all your medical issues. It is a vocational determination that you are limited to sedentary or light work with the following additional limitations. So, what you're trying to prove in a disability case is that vocationally you would not be reliable or dependable at a job. So the medical issue, you don't, unless you're listing level, the medical is sort of the hinge. I mean, you've got to prove that the medical means something vocationally. So if you're medically, you've got a herniated disc, and you've got a, knee bone on bone, and you've got bad breath, whatever it may be, all those things are great, but if it doesn't limit you vocationally, you're not going to win. So what you really got to focus on is translating the medical into very, very specific vocational limitations. So vocationally, that's what you want to really focus on. And if your doctor will make comments or assessments about the vocational implications of your medical problem, to the extent that they can, that is helpful. So if you're asking, we don't win on a diagnosis A, but if you're asking, the medical issues, are they more important than the vocational? I would say really no, because, the medical diagnosis you don't win or lose. It's the vocational implications of that. And ultimately, a judge has to make a decision. What does it mean? Is it reasonable? Is it logical that this medical problem, the COPD you have, the carpal tunnel you have, the pulmonary issues, the breathing issues you've got, the problems you have, around dust, fumes, and gases. What does that mean in terms of your capacity to do past work or any other work? So maybe that's what you're asking, but I think that's my take, at least, that this is really vocational in nature. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, and when you say vocational, would you be saying the same thing as the functional limitations?
Yeah,
the functional, but when we talk about functional, we're talking about the subset of functioning that would relate to things that are needed for work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right, you may have,
you
could have a functional limitation I get this is kind of a silly example, but let's say that you have a really bad burn scar on your hand, okay, but it doesn't affect the use of your hand. Functionally, that might eliminate jobs where you would be a hand model, okay, or a job where you might have and it's a silly example, but where your hand, the appearance of your hand might be relevant to something. But functionally, if you can pack and you can lift and carry, that's not a work preclusive limitation. So you really have to think about all these issues in terms of how they work preclusive. And quite often we see people that have gone to the psychologist or had a CE, consultative evaluation, and they are diagnosed with mild depression or mild anxiety, or they have, mild back pain. Well, mild anything is probably not going to be work preclusive, because most judges will conclude that if you have a mild level of anxiety or depression, maybe that eliminates highly skilled work under a high pressure environment, but 1 or 2 step entry level jobs is probably not going to be limited by a mild depression or mild anxiety. So, you've got to really focus on, getting a doctor if you can to identify significant, severe work preclusive level type of limitations. And Social Security's got their own little code where, you have, things they talk about, moderate, they have marked, marked limitation is much more significant than a moderate or limitation or slight limitation. So you got to get them to define their terms as well. But yes, to answer your question, Steph, I think that, vocationally, you really want to focus on how this affects you at a job. And really, most cases turn on simple entry level jobs, not the complex jobs, because, with setting aside the grid rules, if you're under 50, you got to prove you can't do anything. And you've been a nurse practitioner, you've been a CPA, but if you can pack ink pens in a box, you're not disabled. Right. So it's a heavy burden.
It is.
All right. Kelly Morgan says, thank you for all you do. I'm at Recon for a year. Just got someone to assign my case. What kind of timeline should I expect in a decision? And by the way, some states, like I talked to an adjudicator a week or two ago out of Texas, and he said it'd been sitting in the staging area for a year and he'd just gotten it. So, there seems to be again, because of the personnel issue, they don't have enough people to make these evaluations. So it just sits there. Then it gets assigned, like what happened to Kelly here. And as far as the time frame, I'm telling people at Recon 8, 9, 10 months. I know. What do you tell people?
And that could be once they get your case, right? Once you get an adjudicator.
Yeah. The adjudicator has, what they do is, just like an initial, they will request medical records. And if they don't get them the first time around, they request them again. Then once they get them, they have to get it to a medical specialist that works with Social Security to review it and to offer an opinion back to the adjudicator. And the medical specialists are very, very busy people. Again, this person I spoke to yesterday said that in this person's office, I'm not going to I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it generic. That many of the medical specialists are doing this part-time in the evenings. And I see a lot of, I don't know if you see them, I see a lot of, pediatricians and, medical specialists that really have nothing to do with pain or orthopedic issues, but they're pediatricians and they're just doing it because they have an MD. But, they're working, she says, because our computer system can show they may be doing it at 2:00 in the morning, because a lot of times it's late at night. They're doing these reviews, and they're backed up because they have not enough people doing them, and they have way too many files, and so it may sit at the medical specialist office for 2, 3, 4 months. Although this person did tell me something very interesting, that if you put on your reconsideration appeal that there's been no changes, that adjudicators many times will kind of, shortcut it and sort of say, well, we're going to rely on the previous medical evaluation and make our decision based on that, which is going to typically be a rubber stamp, that it's not going to be approved. So if you do put nothing has changed, Recon is really totally a rubber stamp.
Yeah.
which
And
we all,
when is there no change in a year? I don't
yeah,
know. I think it'd be very rare for
yeah,
there not to
yeah,
be a
but,
worsening, you know,
yeah. But sometimes I see people that filled their own recon in and they put, no change.
all the
Um,
time. All
yeah.
the time. I see it. I see it all the time.
What is your take, by the way, on with the forms? Because one of the things that Social Security will send out are all these, you know, disability report forms, activities of daily living, pain questionnaires. How important do you think those forms are?
Um, I think the pain one is kind of silly.
Hmm.
Because who can do it's an achy, stabby. It's like, come on.
Hmm.
The function report, what I always say to people is, as far as I can, my theory on those is you can't win on a function report. You always need that foundation of evidence, your medical evidence, just by law, even.
Yeah,
But you can sink your ship with a function report if you blow it.
yeah,
Some people, I see some of the strangest things, and I'll question about it. Like, and it turns out they were thinking something kind of different when they answered it, so I'm like, you're gonna want to fix that so it's a little more reflective of what's reality.
yeah,
So I think it's very important not to blow it in terms of don't let it sink your ship, because
yeah.
if your function report says you jog 5 miles a day because
Right,
you're that person and you have a bad back, I really don't think you're going to win. I don't
right.
care how many surgeries you've had. I think it's going to show that you could do stuff. Whereas if you didn't say that, and assuming you weren't doing that, because if you are
Mm.
doing that, you probably aren't disabled, you know. But so I think and I'll say this about the third party report too, the 3380. They'll never, even the judges, they'll say, "Oh, I see the third party statement from the spouse, but it's an interested party and blah blah
Right.
blah. So I'm not putting any weight on it." So I think that one's a total waste, again, by design, so you can slip up with being overly exuberant about your studliness or your,
Your capacity. Yeah.
maybe it's a little ego trying
Oh
to
yeah.
slip in there. Sometimes I've seen people say things and I'll say, "When was the last time you did that?" Like they'll talk about their hobby of let's say it was jogging.
Hmm.
Um, five, and I'll say, "All right, so you're saying you jog." I'm like, "When's the last time?" Well, it's been a while. Well, how
Mm.
long? 18 months. I go, "Is that really still a hobby? Do you really think that would be something you've done as your current hobby? Because you don't do it, and you don't do it because you're bad,
Yeah.
you just had a surgery or whatever." So sometimes they say the darndest things, and I think it's because they want it to be that way. They're thinking of the past, when it was good, and I think it can be used. You see it in judges' denials all the time. How when they're going to deny, they're going to pull out
Yeah. Everything.
every supportive thing from a function report,
Well, you make a
and when
good
they
point.
award, they do pull out the good stuff though too.
You make a good point in that, and I'll give an example of how much weight you can lift. You know, we
Mm.
know that if you say you can lift more than 10 pounds, that's potentially an issue because now you're kind of getting into light, what they call the light functional capacity, or possibly even medium. And people will sometimes, I've seen a report, I can lift 15 or 20 pounds. That's a bit of a problem because you can lift 20 pounds. That's a lot of capacity. And 20 pounds is a lot. I mean, I don't know if you've tried
It
to
is.
lift 20 pounds. That's a lot. Um,
I it would it blah, blah, blah. It's like holding 2.5 gallons of milk.
mhm.
Can you do that in one hand?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they don't talk about one hand or two hands. Can you, granted that's bulky, but can you hold that much weight in one
Yeah.
hand? And what they don't tell them on the function report is we're looking at it at least occasionally, right? Isn't
Right.
it?
A third of the day. Right.
And these people are like, well, they could do it once,
Once.
but they're
Right.
not told that it's going to be taken as I can do it occasionally.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I don't want to say a trick question, but
I think
what
it is
it
a trick
doesn't
question.
say,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's just how much can the most you can, what's the most you can lift? Like you said, it's not like, okay, is this something you could do 8 or 9 times during the course of a day, or within a 3 hour period of time? How much can you lift? Well, like you said, can I lift 50 or 60 pounds once a day? Yeah, maybe. Could I do it 8 or 9 times a day? Probably not. Yeah. So you got to be real careful about that. I think, you know, like you said, it's really hard for the ego sometimes. And I think, men in particular, especially if you were very physically active, you sort of think of yourself as being that same level of
Yeah.
activity. And I can do 15, 20, 30 pounds. And then, like you said, you ask them, well, let's talk about how much that really is. Could you, well, really, I couldn't do that, but you put it on the form. Look, I have a case that I had a lot of discussion with a client of mine. And in the context of, she got approved, but at a different onset date. And one of the issues that popped up was this person owned a motorcycle. And what she told me, and I fully believe her, that she worked really hard to get this motorcycle. She just can't bring herself to sell it because it just represents all the hard work she did for all these years. And she's proud of it. However, it is in the record several places that she owns a motorcycle. So the judge in the decision kind of implied that he thinks that she may be riding that motorcycle. She says, no way, I don't ride the motorcycle. I just come out and look at it. Okay, I have no reason not to believe her. She's got significant medical issues, but realize those are the sort of things that, is it logical to own a motorcycle that you don't ride?
Right.
Judges might think no.
And particularly, Jonathan, if they've been talking about being very tight on finances,
yeah,
and then they haven't sold it yet, a judge is going to look at all that, I think, and be like,
yeah, I think, because realize, a lot of people think that the legal system is about finding the truth. It really isn't. It's about proving your case. And, again, I believe this person. We've had enough conversations where I totally believe what she's telling me. But, you're a judge who's looked at a record and has talked to this person for a total of 45 minutes at a hearing. And all you know is, like you said, I'm in financial difficulty. I own a $12,000 motorcycle that I haven't sold. Why? And so, you got to just think about, judges are going to look at stuff like that, and it can really, backfire. Like the example you gave, if you put in there that you jog or you go visit, I've had judges ask at hearings, what's the furthest you've driven in the last 3 months? And, if they're saying I got a terrible back, but they've driven to their kid's graduation, they do that, there's some inconsistency there. I would tell somebody, if you've driven 3 or 4 hours, how many breaks did you take? Did you have to stop every 30 minutes, 45 minutes to walk around? You got to give context to it. Because,
right. And they have to be prepared to.
Yeah.
And obviously we would help them at the hearing to don't just end it at 3 or 4 hours, Judge. How far did you drive? You got to give all those details to show that you didn't do this like you would have done it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You're not doing it normally. You're doing it as a disabled,
Yeah. I think that, when it comes to judges, I think that some of the judges go in with the idea, this person, I want to believe this person. I'm looking for evidence to support an approval. Other judges go into it thinking, I think most people exaggerate a little bit, and I'm going to be real, I'm going to be very nitpicky about it. You get a judge who's sort of a little bit, cynical about the legitimacy of all Social Security claims. Anything that strikes that judge as being inconsistent is going to be a problem. And that's why, I know you and I've talked about this a little bit. I like to look at the approval rates, because if I see a judge, under 45%, in my opinion, that judge is probably, more biased against approving, whereas a judge at 65%, whatever, is probably looking for a reason to approve. But again, you have to come across as believable. Don't. And I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse. I say this all the time. What is the pain level? Oh, it's a 10 out of 10 every single day. No, it is not. It's just, otherwise you'd be in the emergency room. Just have to, and that's what an attorney can help you do, is to kind of phrase your life and your level of pain so that it's significant, but also realistic. Because you don't want to come across as being extreme. I think anything always, never, that gets you in trouble, because it's just it's not believable. I mean, I remember years ago, there was a judge, client said, well, I'm in level 10 pain right now. Well, let me stop the hearing and let's call an ambulance for you. So that's what they'll do.
Oh my gosh. I know.
Yeah. You ever had judges?
Don't do that, guys. Right?
You ever had judges? This is back when we did live hearings. People would come in with their pill bottles. There's one judge used to count the pills, and he would look at the
No.
date on the bottle, and if it was, let's say that there were 60 pills in the container, and it was you're supposed to take one a day, and the thing was 45 days ago, how many pills are in the bottle? And if they're more than 15 or whatever, or they're less than whatever it was, that was, and they finally, somebody appealed them
So
on that.
you don't even need your pain meds because you're not
Yeah,
taking them every day.
right,
Exactly.
right.
Wow.
If you're not taking enough pain meds, then
I've never had a judge do anything like that.
yeah,
And I've
they
never
don't
had a
run
judge
through it.
say, what was your reaction when the judge said, "Oh, we better call the ambulance as we speak"?
Yeah, my client kind of had this look on his face. I said, "Well, Judge, I think, we're prepared to continue with the hearing. I think, but what do you say?" And this was when it was live hearings. You kick them under the
What can you
table.
do?
Don't say that.
Right.
I tried to, I think I probably just something to the effect of, "Well, Judge, I think what my client's trying to tell you is that the level of pain is pretty intense. And, what do you say? And you can't
Exactly.
put
I
words in
know.
their
You just
mouth."
have to roll with it.
Yeah. RD just got his first SSDI denial. The first sentence says your condition results in some limitations to your activity, to perform work activities. In 56, was a hairstylist for 38 years. That's just boilerplate language that they're saying you can do, you can't do some things, but you can do other things. So honestly, the language in a denial, in my opinion, is just, most of it's just
Canned.
It doesn't mean anything. And you just have to assume, look, at initial and recon, if you don't meet a listing or possibly a grid rule, you're probably not going to get approved. Don't let that discourage you. Most cases are not approved at initial, and you got to keep appealing. And I think I had a guest on, a former Social Security guy named Spencer Bishens, who used to work for Social Security. Spencer is somewhat cynical. He's like, look, the system is designed to frustrate people by denying people, making them go through the appeal process. They want people to give up. They have a trust fund problem. Now, I'm not sure if I quite would go that far, but he's pretty convinced that they made this system as confusing as possible to make people just give up and go back to work. So, because realize,
maybe the theory is the ones that can go back to work and maybe don't realize
right,
it
right,
will, and then
do
they'll be fine. Yeah. To say that they design it I don't know. That's pretty harsh.
That's pretty harsh. But I mean, it certainly is. It's a bureaucratic process, and having looked at other type of systems. I mean, you look at the VA, you look at some of these other disability systems, and they are very, very complex. And even Social Security, I mean, you made the point about the forms, they don't make a lot of stuff very clear. And, you could, in good faith, fill out a form, not realizing that you just, torpedoed your case because you didn't understand what they were really asking. And it can be very, 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 very frustrating in that regard. Okay.
Hey, Jonathan, with regard to initial and recon, because I think RD was on initial or recon. So I think he or she has a. I'm a little familiar with their case, as a good.
56. Look, if
56, and a hairdresser.
Yeah, you're standing over. So basically, a hairdresser, and they use, Social Security uses something called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. Still, it's I mean, literally updated in 1990. I mean, that's how I mean, you were like in kindergarten back when they last updated, I think, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. But I mean, it's really, really old and outdated, but they still use it. But they have, every job is going to be either sedentary, light, medium, or heavy. And a hairdresser job is going to be a light job, at least, because you're standing on your feet for up to 6 hours a day. Also, you're bending over, it's fine motor manipulation with the hands. So it's definitely a light job. So if you are, and there's probably not a lot of transferable skills from that job to a sedentary job. So at 56, if you can prove you can't do that job, you meet the grid at 202.06. So that, RD, sounds to me like you got a pretty good case. I mean, obviously,
I think so.
You got to prove you can't, return to past work. But I think if you've got back issues or you got carpal tunnel, you can possibly do that. I mean, I win a lot of cases on the grid rules. I think grid rules are great.
Grids.
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, there's been some talk about getting rid of them, but I hope they don't.
That would be the worst thing ever, and I'd have to quit. I have a question for you though. With the initial and recon, my theory is that when people get it, I always say don't give up because of the initial or recon decision, because it's like they don't have. I feel like they have a checkbox list, and they're not allowed discretion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas I said the judge has a lot of discretion. He can read between the lines. He can, it's like such a different scenario at the at the OHO. And
you figure. I mean, I think the adjudicators. I mean, these are people that are, essentially insurance claims adjuster in terms of their training and so forth. The senior people have more training, obviously, but they are given very, very limited parameters to do things, and they're looking for, I call it magic words, listing level problems, or or a grid rule type of thing. And I've had adjudicators tell me they'll sometimes go to bat for people that they really believe are disabled, but the medical
I've seen them. Yep, I've seen them do that too.
Yeah, but there are some, and I will tell you, because of the volume of work, there are adjudicators, and we have an office in Atlanta in Stone Mountain that is notorious for being really, really slow, and really overworked. And they will deny claims, I think, because they're overworked. It's easier just to stay, denied. You can do past work, or there's other work you could do. The medical experts are, they're just zooming through it. So, this is not a thorough evaluation of everything about your case. And, many times they won't even have all the records. I mean, how many times have you looked at a denial that says we had the following records, we're not able to obtain the surgery records, the orthopedic records, or the pain clinic records.
But we had enough to make a decision.
We had enough to make a decision. They couldn't get them, but they still went ahead and made a decision. That happens as well. You have some adjudicators that are really skilled. I mean, this person I talked to yesterday, told me, this person took this person's job very, very seriously, wants to do the right thing, wants cases to be approved that should be approved. There are some that are not like that. I've talked to many adjudicators who I can tell are really, they like what they do. They feel like they're making a difference, and they want people that deserve benefits to get them. There are others who don't feel that way at all. They don't return your phone calls. They just don't get the information they need to get. So, sometimes you're just denied because they're really busy, or they don't care, or, they couldn't get around to it. They have a certain deadline to get the file off their desk, and they just do it. So, all right. Cynthia with an I. It's only Cynthia I've ever known with a, Cynthia's here most weeks. I call her Cynthia with an I because it's Cinthia. She says, hello, Cynthia. How are you doing? RD, this is the hairdresser. I had bladder surgery, rotator cuff, bladder impairments, neuropathy. Yeah, I mean, these are all things that, and there's more. Letter ended, we have sufficient vocational to determine whether you can perform past work based on evidence. We have determined that you can. Yeah, and again, this is very, very common, that they just have boilerplate, but don't give up. This is a, based on what I'm seeing here, I think
RD, you definitely don't give up.
Yeah, it looks like a winning.
Sure. And you notice the canned language that they often use, but you can still move your limbs about.
Yeah.
Like, really? So that is the most ridiculous canned sentence in there.
Yeah. Look, I've had people literally tell me they get so PO'd by reading this nonsense that they just take the paper and they just ball it up and throw it away. And then they apply again, or they think, I'm just going to apply again.
Oh, right. They don't appeal.
Don't apply again. You have 60 days. So you get this. I know it pisses you off because you're like, wait a minute, I've struggled. You got to just realize this is a bureaucratic system.
Yeah.
You got to appeal. You can't give up. You got to appeal. All right. Bala 2001, one of our regulars as well. Good to see you too. Vince, one of my clients. Vince told me about it. Vince is in, I think, Michigan, and I was up in Traverse City, Michigan a few weeks ago, and he told me about Moomer's ice cream, which I definitely tested, and Moomer's ice cream is all that Vince said it was going to be. So very good. Jim says hello. Hello to Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Bama DRB, good evening. Greatly appreciated. Good to see you. Dennis, you are here. Thank you, Dennis. Nickerson says he can appeal us. He can hear us. That's good. Maureen. Maureen says, hello, Jonathan. Welcome and thanks for being with us, Stephanie. Very good. Okay, they're hearing us loud and clear. Okay. Okay, Stephanie. All right. So apparently RD was on your chat this morning. So
yeah.
Okay. What do you do? You do a live stream? What it run noon?
Lunchtime. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
how many
an
days
earlier person.
Yeah. How many days a week?
Just Wednesdays.
Just Wednesday. Okay. Very good. Yeah. I know that Walter Knott does them, and there's a few people out there who do them, and I think it's all good information. The more information you can educate yourself, the better.
And it's like the fun day.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's a breakup of the monotony or
it's
solitude.
It's good to answer questions and good to be seen. Okay, an SSDI recipient is a CDR and has to wait for a doctor's appointment. What's the correct way to provide the form on time? So I think what the focus lady is asking is, we got a CDR, there's a deadline to get it back in, but there's a pending doctor's appointment. And I'm guessing the long form CDR. I would think you could put on there, that they ask about doctor's appointments. You could put, the name of the doctor and just say the appointment date is pending. Or would you even do that? What do you think?
Well, I think that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But isn't there one that just happened within the last 6 months? Because, don't they ask for the most recent ones?
Yeah, they do.
I would do both, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the point what Focus Lady is making is, you don't want them to make a decision on the CDR when there's a really important upcoming medical appointment. You want them to hold it until that appointment goes through, because presumably it's going to show something significantly wrong. So I think you can tell, one of the things you can do in the Social Security world is they give you the forms. There's always opportunities to add stuff to it. There's a form 795, for example, which is a statement of claimant or other person. You can add that to anything. So if you feel like something needs to be explained, you can always add a page or add a 795 and do that. That being said, in the legal business, we're always taught sometimes the less said, the better. You don't want to volunteer stuff that could come back to bite you. And again, if you're doing this without the benefit of counsel, you got to be real careful, because you can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory if you're not careful. So you want to be real careful. But yeah, I think that if you have a medical appointment coming up and you want them to know about that, you can put that on the form or add a piece of paper or do it in a 795, SSA 795, realizing that if that appointment comes back in your favor, great. But if it comes back against you, that could backfire and bite you. So just be aware.
And also, you might be able to ask for an extension to get the form in.
Yeah. Although, the problem is that getting through to somebody, is a challenge. You call and try to get through to somebody. B, even if somebody says, yes, you have more time, if you can't get in writing, do you really trust that it's going to be properly noted?
Sure.
I would be real hesitant to ask for an extension. I kind of like the idea of just putting in there that there's upcoming medical record going to be coming down in 3 weeks. I want you to have it. Here's where to get it. And that I think is probably safer. I think, at least. Papa's Place says thumbs up. Yes, please give us a thumbs up. Okay. Last time you were confused. Well, Lisa, I am frequently confused. So that is by no means anything unusual. I couldn't figure out how to get the stupid microphone to work. So, so being confused is like calling water being wet. May take my comments. Okay. ALJ gave an unfavorable. I want to appeal. The home office said no, I had to reapply, which is wrong. So I fought it. They reopened the case. They made me close the one they owned up to it, put an appeal, confined the process time. Okay, so I think big picture what Lisa is saying is that I think that what you're saying is that you got an unfavorable decision and you wanted to appeal it, but somebody told you don't appeal it file a new application, which of course is not correct. You should, appeal the thing to the appeal that unfavorable to the appeals council, and that apparently Social Security owned up to it and allowed you to put the appeal in late, and they want you to cancel the new application, which, under the rules now, you can't file a new application if you're also filing an appeals council appeal. So that's probably correct. But this is where, maybe I'm not completely understanding what you're asking, but when they mess things up procedurally like that, it can be a real problem because Social Security tends to operate under very sort of, things have to flow within the system. And when you sort of say, make an exception because you screwed up, it's got to be properly coded. And that can be a challenge sometimes. I don't know if you've had that happen, but somebody will say something and then it never gets coded properly, and then boom, you got a big problem. So at the end of the day, if the appeals council has received your appeal and you got verification of that, that's probably where you need to be.
Did she say it was an ALJ decision she was appealing? It probably was, right?
The first part of it says, last time you were confused, may take my 2 comments. Okay, ALJ gave an unfavorable decision. I went to
ALJ, gotcha. Okay.
Home office said I had to reapply, which is wrong. So I fought it. I reopened the case. They made me close the new application, and then we put it in the appeal months later.
I think she's frustrated because the appeal is starting so late and appeals council is slow to begin with.
Yeah.
Can she get bumped to the line where she should have been in had they taken it properly?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to happen,
No,
Lisa.
No.
You just got to.
But as far as being backdated, I mean, the appeal, if they let the appeal come in late, it'll be considered a timely appeal. But yeah, they're not going to move your case to the front of the line. I think that you're just in good situation that they're actually giving you the appeal to appeals council, which unfortunately I'm going to tell you is to some degree a rubber stamp. It is not the percentage of cases approved at the appeals council are remanded is pretty small. At the next level, at district court, is much greater. I've had Adriana De La Torre on before. I don't know if you know her. She does a lot of federal court work, and we talk about that, and she's like, yeah, the district court is much more of a chance you're going to have to get the result you want. The appeals council maybe, but they tend to rubber stamp stuff, and so when you appeal it, you tend to want to end up going to federal court, is where you'll end up most of the time.
Does Adriana do all states? Probably not, right?
Does she do what?
Do you know what states she does?
I don't know. I mean, she just does federal appeals work, and I don't know. Whether I know that a lot of the attorneys who do federal district court work, and I don't. I usually bring somebody. I always bring somebody.
Right, me neither.
Many of them can get pro hoc vice admission. I know that I do some work with Carl Osterhout, who's very, very capable appeals and federal court lawyer, and I will do. Sometimes they'll call me up and say, "Can you be our local counsel for purposes of notices?" And I will do that. And other people I've done that for as well. So most attorneys who do district court work can get either admitted or they can find somebody to do it. I'm not sure about Adriana whether she just does certain states or not. I don't know. That's a good question. But she does, by the way, if you're interested in kind of learning about some of the federal court work that's being done.
I read them all the time.
Yeah, she's got a great LinkedIn channel or LinkedIn.
I love it.
Profile. Yeah, and you look her up.
Whenever there's a circuit court case,
yeah,
I'm on it.
She kind of talks about what it means and there's a lot of times a discussion. She's a very, very sharp person, and she was actually on somebody else's podcast. I think she posted that today or yesterday. I was listening to a little bit of it, but yeah, she's very sharp, and she's again, she's been on with me a couple of times, but she very, very open to sharing what she knows, and a very, very just a nice person. I really enjoyed talking.
Yeah, I love her stuff. I love her stuff.
MT. I got on the SSA app and I got denied SSI, but the SSDI is in step 4. Says my case was back to my local home down for final medical review has been approved for SSDI. Yeah, I get this question a lot. if it comes, I mean, if it says on your My SSA account, My Social Security account, that it's a non-medical review, I don't know that that necessarily means you're being approved. It could, I just don't, my opinion is that what that says on your My Social Security account doesn't mean a darn thing. I don't.
And it's terrible. We talk about this all the time because they're sending we've made a decision.
Yeah.
And now you're going to non-medical review.
Right.
A couple of years ago, this started happening. And the implication is, well, you must have won because you don't need a non-medical review unless you've passed the medical. That's the whole point, right? And suddenly this message is coming out. So everyone was all excited, myself included, until immediately it was clearly not so because people were getting denied after getting that message. Now, in this case, so it goes out with wins and with loses. It's just like a ridiculous. I don't even know why they tell them that. It's like it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But here I'm seeing I got denied SSI.
And that may be because of income and resources, by the way.
But he probably didn't have a perk yet because he just saw it on the app. So I'm thinking, I don't know.
A perk is an income and resource interview. Yeah. Although sometimes, it's an interesting question. Unless they have some way to know that, let's say the person has a spouse or they have assets in there. It's odd because normally, your SSI and SSDI are going to be denied at the same time because of the medical part of it. And until they do an investigation to determine whether you have assets or resources, they're not going to be able to say you're non-medically not approved for SSI.
Know? Oh, go ahead.
No, it's unclear why you would get a notice of SSI denial unless there's some way they knew that you don't qualify non-medically.
I'm wondering that non-medical review that happens to win, lose, or draw. Did people that are strictly applying for SSI get that at all? Or do they not get that? And if they don't, then that could explain that. And it might not be good news for the SSDI part.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer because I have people that are only SSI, but not as many. I mean, it's much more.
Either. You have the current cases where they're both, but normally those make it to the hearing, and actually that can be an issue, by the way, if you apply for SSI when you clearly don't qualify because your spouse earns $100,000 a year, or because you have $30,000 in the stock market. Filing for SSI is just going to cause unnecessary delay. It's really not necessarily a good idea if you clearly don't qualify. People don't necessarily know that all the time, but if you're thinking about applying and you clearly look up the requirements for SSI, you got to be really, really low income, and if you're really not likely to be approved, don't apply for it because
it will. Yeah, because even when you win, remember they're going to do the SSI first,
and that's
going to hang up your case. Potentially a couple months.
Right. It's going to, I've seen it take 5-6 months. It can take a really, really long time. Yeah. Okay. Jim, should images be included in a record packet? When you images, I mean, assuming you're meaning like MRI or X-ray or things like that. I mean, you can. I've never been a huge fan of putting images. I know, and maybe it could also be a photograph. I mean, of let's say, a joint that is, red and swollen, something like that. Do you ever use photographs or upload any of that?
Nope. Yeah. Because I've been told from way back when, and it makes total sense. The adjudicators, they can't interpret those. It has to be by a medical, an MD or radiologist, whoever's going to interpret it. And I'm also, in this day and age, I'm not sure. I mean, when I started, this wasn't an issue. There wasn't no Photoshop and stuff,
right,
in the regular households. But now they're not going to trust that.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Right. No, I mean, in fact, I was looking on Facebook today, and there's all these videos, and now there are videos. There's one of like a bear rescuing a tiger. I mean, it's just ridiculous nonsense.
Oh my God, I hate them.
It looks realistic, or you have, I mean, you can sort of tell at this point it's kind of
It's
AI.
starting to come clear. Yeah.
But I mean, there,
I can't
you don't know
stand
what
it.
to believe. I mean, and I remember when this sounds silly, when Ozzy Osbourne died, a few weeks
Mm.
ago, there's this picture of like, Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin and Paul McCartney and somebody else, standing by the coffin in tears before the guy was even buried. I'm like, this is clearly AI, but if you didn't know it, you're like, well, they went to the funeral. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't believe anything. And in fact,
Anything. I mean,
yeah,
some are fun because the person's just being creative and making
right,
some a dragon or whatever. But some of the other ones, yeah,
yeah,
I just ignore everything now.
yeah.
I didn't click on
Well, I mean,
reels.
I use, one of the things when I have an Instagram channel, which by the way reminded me to put this on there because I'm trying to grow my Instagram channel both for myself and for my wife here. But this is just mine. So if anybody's interested, please subscribe to my Instagram channel. My point though is that when you do an Instagram, you a lot of times will put like a page, like a title page, what it's about. And so kind of a best practice is to use an image. And so I go to this AI tool called Midjourney, Midjourney, and you could basically say, all right, I need a picture of a, a 35-year-old, discus thrower with a knee wrapped up and wearing sunglasses, and it'll give you a picture of a discus throw. I mean, it will literally give you a picture. If the more detailed, the
Pretty
better.
interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I could say, put me, in a spaceship, and here's a picture. I mean, and this, but I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
and Chat GPT will do the same thing. So, the days when you can assume that a photograph is a photograph, not so much. And I'm a photographer. I mean, I take a lot of pictures. My grandchild. I take a lot of sports pictures, and it's you develop some skill doing it. But now I can literally make something up and enter a contest, and it theoretically could be you could win a contest with a fake photograph.
Yeah.
There's
Crazy.
actually a guy, and I don't get too much down the rabbit hole with this. There's a musician, a guy named Rick Beato, who actually happens to be in the Atlanta area, who has got a real interesting YouTube channel. He talks about what makes a song great, or he talks about musicians that he likes, and he sort of breaks down stuff, and it's very interesting. If you like music, just to kind of understand a little bit more about kind of the details behind it. Some of it goes beyond me, but I do find it interesting. So, but his point was that you can go into some of these AI tools and you can create and say, okay, I need to come up with a singer-songwriter who's 29 years old, kind of has that grunge look, grunge appeal. Songs are sort of in a kind of a melancholy. And he literally created in about 10 minutes a picture of somebody and the music with lyrics, and he plays the music, and he's like, he goes, quite frankly, this isn't all that bad. The problem is it's not real. And he's like, people are putting stuff on Spotify that is not real. It is music that is not made by musicians. And his argument against it is, he's like, this is derivative, meaning that you're taking stuff that people have worked really hard to get good at, and you're using that to make your new music. But
Yeah.
isn't everything derivative? I mean, isn't it all derivative? I mean, you listen to the Beatles, and you can find where they were influenced by this musician or that musician. It's all derivative. So this is just a different tool. I'm not sure that I,
Yeah.
buy what he's
Yeah.
saying. At the end of
Well,
the
I
day,
kind of, if they're actually I don't know. I mean, I'm a very musically ignorant person,
mhm,
and can't carry a tune.
yeah,
But it does seem like it's the derivative of being influenced by somebody who, say, raised you and was in your environment, and you learned from them, and then you created, versus, I don't know, taking snips and snips from someone else's stuff and sticking them all together.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying that's not a skill, but it's just a totally different skill. And I think I was hearing, I don't know, are they talking about like there there should be rules, I suppose, that you must identify it as such. Like,
yeah.
do it, but just identify it as such.
I think that's what he's getting at, is that there should be you should be, first of all, he doesn't think that you should be able to monetize AI generated music. That you have to reveal it. It shouldn't be monetized by Spotify and all that stuff. And it should be clearly identified as such. But I think that cat's out of the bag. I don't know that that's going to happen. And,
yeah. And I mean, can't monetize it. I mean, if the person made it and they can sell it, if there's a market, but I think that transparency might be what's really important. We are way out down the rabbit hole in this one, aren't we, guys? But yeah, I just think if it's transparent, because otherwise you're selling something to somebody claiming it to be music when it's not man-made
what
music,
they did. Well, I mean, I think that, we're using, we had a little discussion about this before we went on, AI tools can be used to help prepare a Social Security case, write a brief. Nothing wrong with that. But, you still have to make sure it's accurate. And, it's getting to the point where it's very hard to tell. I see a lot of blog posts out there on legal blogs that are clearly AI written. And, you can tell now, but, 2 years from now, you probably can't. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nuts.
Jeff Brown, let's get back to business here. Jeff Brown had a car accident in June, continued to work despite having 6 herniated discs. Treating physician wants epidurals, facet injections, as well as SI injections. Will this be a positive in a future SSDI claim? The fact I'm still working while in workers' comp A plus or a negative for me. All right. A lot to unpack there. Let me give you first crack at it. How would you answer?
Okay. So if I'm getting this right, he has this car accident. He's got some injuries. He's still able to work, is working. Somehow is getting workers' comp while he's working. What is that? Like he's working on late or?
He might be getting temporary partial disability. In other words, let's say he was working, but he's making less money because of his injury. He can get some temporary partial benefits, at least in Georgia. Do that.
Would that be reduced hours, or does that just mean reduced pay?
It could be reduced hours, or I've seen it situation. It doesn't happen a lot, but let's say somebody has they're a skilled worker driving a forklift and they're getting paid $20 an hour, and workers' comp puts them in light duty where they're getting paid $12 an hour, and workers' comp typically pays a percentage of your average weekly wage, and the difference might be $150 a week. So, or whatever it may be. So you may be able to get that and you're, while in light duty is what it boils down to. The bigger issue with workers' comp in general is it doesn't play well with Social Security, because if you're on workers' comp, that offsets Social Security. So generally speaking, and I don't want to give an absolute, but generally speaking, I'm not so inclined to take a disability case when somebody has an active comp case. Once they settle it, and the settlement language has what they call Hartman language in it, that basically says that this will be treated as payout over your expected lifespan and reduce your Social Security benefit by a small amount. But if you're actively getting workers' comp, it's going to be really hard to get much in the way of Social Security. Yeah.
If you're I know some colleagues that won't take cases where there's a workers' comp component at all.
Yeah.
I do, and I just took one where it was active I just took it. I think it just stopped being active. It's pretty much going to be a pro bono, I think, but it's one of my 1% things, guys, that I always talk about.
Yeah.
YouTube supports the 1%ers. But one thing for this guy, like if he had been reduced to, I would think whether it's going to be good or bad for him.
Yeah.
I think it can be bad if it shows that injury is not bad enough to stop you from, remember, Social Security is stopping you from all work,
right?
Not just workers' comp, which is
and if you're working, by definition, you're not disabled, right?
Right.
If you're over SGA, if you're over the $120.20,
and that's easy to get over SGA if you're working full time, right? Even at low pay. So, but unless the reason why he's getting some workers' comp because his pay is reduced because his hours are much shorter and under SGA, like, you know what I mean? If it was something like that where it was shorter hours because he can't pull out a full day, and it's then it might not matter for so much for later, but in general, I think it's something to be a little worried about.
Well, the other thing, keep in mind that workers' comp doctors are biased. I mean, they want to try to get you back to work. So, it may be that Jeff has been put on light duty and it's kind of a make work job. I know my wife talks about that. They'll give them this kind of bogus job where they're sitting there in a room doing nothing, but they're on light duty. And it's kind of part of an overall strategy by the workers' comp carrier to settle the case cheaply. So that may be going on, as well. We don't know. And of course, the doctors that workers' comp sends you to are not going to necessarily be all that supportive. So, but I think big picture is, and the other question he asks is, what about all this conservative, kind of minimally invasive treatment? That's something pretty typical they're going to put you through before going to surgery. That shows, look, I mean, epidurals, facet injections, SI injections, they generally are not designed to cure you or to solve a problem. They're designed to reduce pain and to allow you to function a little bit better, but they generally don't have any long-term, curative effects. So, going through that is pretty typical in an orthopedic case, 6 herniated discs. Rarely, in a rare situation, it's going to be enough to, to really make a permanent difference. But I think, you're probably heading towards surgery. So I think big picture, to put a bow on this, I would say that, if you're you're still working on light duty, you're getting workers' comp, and you're still going through all the preliminary pre-surgical treatments, it's probably a little bit early for Social Security, just because you're probably making enough money where you're not disabled by virtue of your earnings. I think that, at some point, if you settle your case and now there's no more money coming in and you can't work, and then you've gone through all the surgery, you've got this, significant problem, then it might be more appropriate to pursue Social Security. With the lingering problem in the background is you got to watch your date last insured, because if you are out of work for 5 years, then your insurance runs out. So you got to be careful about that too. But I think that the fact you're still working would probably make it, depending on what you earn, is probably going to make it impossible to pursue Social Security if you're over the 1620 SGA amount. That's what I would say. Okay, Papa's Place. How soon will they try to pull medical records? My case is new and seeing doctors once or twice a week. I guess you're talking about the adjudicators. My understanding is that, once the file is assigned to an adjudicator, they will immediately send out requests for medical records. That's why you sign the 827, the medical release. They'll send it out pretty quickly, assuming they're working the file. Now, again, I've seen offices where usually what I see is, as soon as the file is assigned to the adjudicator, they send out these medical requests. Sometimes they follow up right away. Other times you may see nothing for 8 or 9 months because they haven't, gotten around to, because they're so busy, to reviewing what they've gotten back. But normally they get out the request pretty quickly, I think. But that's after the case is assigned. So if you're in Texas, for example, the case may not be assigned to an adjudicator for a year, in which case no one's going to request medical records for a year. And by the way, if it's been 5 or 6 months, you haven't heard anything, that's when I say contact your senator's office, ask for a congressional inquiry. Do you tell people to do that, a congressional inquiry?
Yeah. I mean, if they're my clients, we kind of do it together, but yeah, for sure.
Okay. Angie Vasquez, the judge asked the first hypothetical, it was no. Second hypothetical was a yes, as a router of sorts, asking the question of 2 days off, and the VA said no. That's all she asked. So I think what Angie is asking is, there's a number of hypothetical questions. One of them got no jobs. One of them got, yes, this person could be a router and probably a couple other jobs. And then the judge says, what about the person's missing 2 days of work per month? My take on that is we don't know, because those hypothetical questions, the judge will choose one of them to represent, your RFC, your functional capacity. We don't know which one that would be. Obviously, you want it to be one where the answer was no jobs. Now, that last question is kind of a throwaway question, because almost every judge asks that at every hearing, the last question would be, Mr. Vocational Witness, assuming our hypothetical person is off task for 15% of the day or more, or missing 2 days of work per month, every vocational witness is going to say no jobs. So that last one probably wouldn't be relevant to me. The first and the second, would be more so. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, because you don't, again, it doesn't, just because a judge asks about that 2 days off doesn't mean he's going to find that you are going to need 2 days off.
Yeah. Yeah.
They often, I think they do it to like, just kind of like leave it out there so that
Yep.
no one knows what's going to happen. Maybe
Yeah.
because he doesn't know, or maybe because he wants to save time, and instead of wrapping it up and then letting the other attorney come in, who we're going to ask about that stuff just
Yeah.
to make sure it's on the record. Maybe it's a time saving thing, like just to
Yeah.
look through that.
And I think some judges, realize that judges up until COVID were appearing in person. And back in the day when we go to in-person hearings, you go to a hearing room, there's no security there. There's no bailiff. And so, I suspect that some judges were concerned about, a really angry claimant throwing, a water bottle at him or attacking him. So judges kind of get in the habit of just not saying what they're going to do. And you don't always know. I mean, I've had situations where a judge will ask questions. Based on the questions, I feel pretty comfortable they're going to approve it. I get a denial. I've had questions based on the questions, they're going to deny it. I get an approval. You don't really know. But it's just going to be one of those questions is going to reflect what the judge is thinking. You just don't know what it is. Unfortunately.
Jonathan, do you know if the judges, with the many employees having to show up at the office, do you know if judges are being held to that, or if they're still doing MS Teams from their home offices?
Yeah, I mean, I've had judges say on the record, I'm in my home office. Others,
but I thought with the new rule, like, I don't know, does it apply to them?
I don't know. I don't know. I know. If I'm not mistaken, there's one judge I'm pretty friendly with, and he was saying that he's required to be there a certain number of days per week or whatever, and they literally do the hearings from a hearing office. But I'm, of course, in my home office, my clients at the home office. I think it just kind of depends. But I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I knew they had to go in when they were going to do in person, so they had to have certain days set aside for that. I was just wondering if that overall come back to the office people situation applied to them. I was kind of hoping it didn't, because I think a lot of them liked not having to do the commute, not having to be in that I hate to say it, but there are some unstable people who I remember hearing one situation where there was like a full-blown attack through a chair at the judge, and I also thought that was a reason why sometimes judges don't, for a long spell, it seemed like the judges didn't even they didn't tell you, or they might have been hesitant to say if you won either. Like, a judge just doesn't say it one way or another, because people would start to share the fact that, oh, that judge will tell you if you won. So now the person who doesn't get told knows he lost. And if he's, uncontrollable anger, it could be a dangerous situation. And not just for the judge. I mean, there's other people in there, like the court reporter and the people in the waiting room.
Look, I remember, I mean, I'm sure it was the same way up where you are, but I mean, you go to the hearing office. These hearing offices are in office buildings. They're typically not in courtrooms. And so, let's say in Atlanta, we have Peachtree Center, which is a big office center in downtown Atlanta, where you walk in there and there's a security guard who'll take a wand and wand you down. How hard would it be if, let's say, you really wanted to sneak in a weapon? You could. I don't think it'd be that hard to do. I mean, the security guard's one person. He's dealing with one person at a time. These people aren't paid very much. Yeah, it would not be. It's not the same as going to a courtroom where they you have to go through a metal detector. They have a wand, and you could have a plastic knife. I mean, there's any number of things. So yeah, I think it's. I suspect judges do like that.
In ours, you go all the way through the waiting room up to the front desk, and that's the guard would wand you. So you got to go through the whole waiting room.
Right. Exactly. No, and I think many judges, I'm sure, because I feel the same way. You're in a room with 25, 30 other people. A lot of times there's kids there, and they're hacking, they're coughing, all. I mean, it's just people who sometimes are not feeling well. And
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that, but I'm sure judges don't want to be in a small hearing room with people, especially in the COVID environment where you have contagious diseases. They probably don't want to do that, so they like being at home, I suspect. So Angie, the answer is we don't know. It's just too hard to really tell based on what you asked there. Let's see. Michael Chillers, I'm not sure if he's talking about to me or to you.
I'm not familiar.
Okay. Let me see if there's, I don't like to talk about specific cases on a live stream. Let me just see if I see this, because I want to make sure I'm, Michael is one of my clients. So, okay.
I do know that they can go. I know this for a fact now because my client just sent me a screenshot to show that it's saying that I'm the representative.
Yeah.
Like in their little online thing. So Michael, if you can get into your SSA.
Yeah, I mean, I've got him as in my database. Let me just see what social.
Because they take forever to process some of these things. I have one guy that took us 4 months to get connected.
Yeah. I'm not saying that Social Security has it yet, but I've got it in mind. But yeah, I'm going to make a note. In fact, this is one because sometimes people ask me questions, and I want to make sure I get back to them. Yeah. But this is one where it does not appear that Social Security has
processed
just the paperwork. So Michael. Jen and I will get back with you on that. I just want to make sure we do follow up, but I just left myself a note. Christian Hendricks, got my decision this month, have rheumatoid arthritis, my right rib scoliosis and cerebral palsy on my left side. Let's see if there's anything else here. Don't see anything else there. Christian, you didn't say if you won or not, so you got a decision. Hopefully you won. RA cases, those are kind of interesting. What is your take on RA, on rheumatoid arthritis? Have you had you have success with it?
I usually they're people that are over 50, so that's helpful. I find it to be a good diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got a few things going on.
Yeah.
Christian, or I think that might be a fellow. My nephew's name is Christian, and I'm Uncle Christian.
Cerebral palsy you're born with, and obviously that's going to limit you in terms of certain physical limitations.
Stuff. Yeah, and rheumatoid arthritis can be really a horror show,
But it depends. I mean, RA is one of these things where you can have it really bad, multiple joints, or you can have a mild case. It could be,
how far is it along?
Medicine, right? But having cerebral palsy in your left side is going to certainly limit you. Christian, I think your age is really a big factor here. How old are you? So. If you're 35 or are you 55, makes a big difference. Cynthia says, I finally spoke with someone from my senator's office. They're waiting for SS officer to reply when it will take. Thoughts. All right. So Cynthia, I've suggested on the live stream before that you contact your senator. Normally they get a response pretty quickly from Social Security because, when your U.S. Senator's office calls Social Security, senators hold have a lot of power, and so when they call about one of their constituents, usually you get a response in a week or two. They can't put their thumb on the scale, but they can certainly find out what's going on. But I would say a week or two is my experience.
I agree.
Autumn Hoffers. Okay, this is my Dude Ranch client.
Dude Ranch.
Absolutely.
I'm so jealous.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, we had some interest because I'm a doodle owner, so we had some discussions about that. But good to see you here. Good to see you here. Randy has a CE exam tomorrow. Obviously, Randy, as you know, they've now they're processing your claim. I'm seeing it on Social Security. We had an issue with Social Security just not processing claims, and it was kind of a mess. But I think we're in the right position now. Nickerson, we will. It's been asking me to review a kind of a complicated situation, and I need to get onto that, which I will do. And I apologize for not getting back to you this past week. Thought I said I was going to do, but I will have that on my notes as well. Let's see. When I last logged onto my SSA website, it made me acknowledge they have authority to retrieve my medical records. One of those expedite. So I think you must have signed an electronic 827. Is that what you think that might be here?
Probably.
Okay.
They're doing, they're doing them electronically now, so I guess that could be.
827 is a medical release. I think that, I mean, certainly getting the records will expedite decisions. I think what you're asking is, if you sign an 827, can they now pull your medical records at will and do more of a CDR? I don't know that that's the reason for it. I think they certainly, want to have ability to access your medical records. They're going to do a CDR if it comes up that they're going to do a CDR. In other words, if your case is diaried for CDR, and that would be either because the judge said in the decision this case should be reviewed in 12 or 18 months, or it was coded as one where medical improvement is likely, or it was randomly picked. So, they're not asking for their medical authorization. They can do a fishing expedition. It's because there is a CDR, there's a process for doing CDRs. And if you are not coded as one where there's unlikely to be medical improvement, then you may get one. I don't know if I answered that correctly, but I mean, separate the two. Whether you have a CDR is one question. What they're going to do with the medical authorization is something else. But, yes, part of the reason to have an updated medical authorization would be they can get the medical records, and it just saves time. Instead of having to ask you for it all the, right before they go through it, they sort of have it in their back pocket, is maybe a good way to answer that.
I'm curious. It doesn't say here, Jim, but are you in a CDR as far as you know? Or are you saying you're a beneficiary and you just decided to check your SSA like people do, maybe to get the benefits letter or whatever? And did it make you authorize like an 827 when you're not in a CDR, or are you in a CDR? I'm just wondering, you know what I mean? Like, because that would be a little unnerving to have to sign an 827 every time you want to go into your SSA online account. I think that would be very inappropriate, right? In the middle of no CDR.
Yeah.
So yeah. I can't imagine that they would do that. That would be, I haven't heard anything like that. So it makes me think maybe you're in a CDR.
Could be.
And maybe that's why you're bringing it up. Maybe expedite your CDR, which it will. That's helpful.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, if you're going to do a CDR, let them get the information, then make a decision. Being in limbo is not a fun place to be.
It'll drag out. And then if they don't get it, then they remember that no medical evidence is a sign of improvement. So you don't want that.
Yeah.
You want them to get it.
Okay. All right. So Autumn offers, person's name is Karen, but we'll just leave it at that. What is the difference between my client portal and then the AS portal? I'm not sure what you're meaning by that. Should I enter all the information on both?
It's your system.
Huh?
She's talking about your system.
Oh, the my client. Okay.
Oh, my case.
My case. Okay.
You and I use it both company.
Okay. Type in information, enter all information. I wouldn't, you don't need to duplicate what you put in there. I think certainly in the my case form, I need the names of the doctors. If you've got actual records, you can do that. But yeah, the form, it's very helpful because that gives us something to work with. So I think if you could complete that form from my case, that would be helpful. If you have records, yes, update them to the portal. That would be good. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Now, Karen, I know who you are. I just, I don't know, Stephanie, I don't know if you deal with this when you're doing live streams, a lot of your clients are going to come and obviously I know some of them just by their name.
Oh yeah. And if you don't know,
you're not really discussing people's personal business, but I sort of come to the conclusion I'll use first names. But yeah.
And I think like people watching recorded videos and posting have a different name than what shows up when they're watching a video. Is there two different
I think if you have your own YouTube channel, then that's the name that's going to show up on your when you comment, I believe. I don't know.
Oh.
That
And
may be
then
what's
someone
going
who
on.
doesn't, it'll be
I
okay.
think Karen has a YouTube channel for the. I'm sure she does for the Dude
For
Ranch.
the dudes.
Yeah, Doodle. These are dogs. Not
Yes, the
Dude Ranch
dudes.
like cowboys. It's Doodle. But okay. Focused
Very cool.
birds and dogs in the background.
Yeah, that's probably my background.
Okay. Okay.
I'm in a zoo, didn't you know?
Okay. Actually, we took my granddaughter to the zoo last Saturday, and we had it was actually, the weather was not too hot, so we had a fun time taking her around, and she went to the petting zoo, and she was very intrigued with all the goats and everything like that. She could pet them,
Yeah.
and she got to feed a giraffe, so she just turned 2, and she got to feed a giraffe, so she had a good time with that, and I got some fun pictures with that.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Hi, Shub.
Shub. Okay. Shub and I have this ongoing thing about I think about the Braves and maybe the I think he's a Phillies fan, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, but we kind of go back and forth a little bit. After 9 months and a 36-month trial, okay, is there another 5 years in the case completely closed? I think you're talking about the 9-month trial work period. Then you have the what is the 36-month extended period of disability? Is that maybe what you're talking about? And then the 5. I'm not sure what the 5 years is. Does that make any sense to you?
No.
No.
I mean, the 5 years is a rolling scrolling
That,
period for the
that
9
the
months.
5 years is for the
Period.
trial work period. So if you've exhausted that, but you're no longer on disability, in other words, if you've used up your 5-month, it gets a little confusing. If you use up your trial work period and you remain below SGA, you continue to get benefits. If you use up your 9-month trial work period and you go over SGA, they're going to move to terminate you. If you're terminated, there's no more trial work period because you're off of benefits. But if you've used up your 9-month trial work period and you've gone through, I'm not sure what the 36-month.
I think he's referring to the extended period of eligibility, EPE,
but that's
where you don't get terminated unless you do a successful work attempt. You could, but for every month you're over SGA, you got to send back your Social Security money. Be an overpayment.
The trial work period doesn't renew until 5 years later, but that's assuming you're getting your ongoing benefits. If you're off benefits, I don't believe that it does apply. Honestly, just to be straight with everybody, we don't really deal with that much. Usually people, they hire us to get on benefits. We could try to answer questions about trial work period, but after they've gone through the trial work period and they've returned to work, and then there's the extended period of eligibility, I don't really deal with that very much, quite frankly. It's because, they just essentially go back to Social Security, is my understanding, and say, I'm off of work and please restart my benefits. There's really not a function for a lawyer that I'm aware of.
Right. Well, it would be like, if they've been ceased because they were earning too much, they can do that expedited reinstatement if they suddenly can't work again. Like they lose that job and they're not working because of their disabilities. They can do that.
I just don't know if Social Security says, no, we're not going to return you to benefits, do you have the right to appeal it and then go to the
yeah, because I think it's kind of, I feel like the expedited reinstatement is really just a whole new, it's kind of an application.
A new case?
Yeah, they just do it supposedly a little faster, but honestly, it's not that fast. I think maybe you go to the front of the line. They still order all your records. They still, make sure. So, and I have represented people on those, when I didn't represent them on the underlying, but then they, did what they did and
I really
whatever.
have
And then
not. It doesn't come up very much. I mean,
it doesn't. It's not often. It's definitely not often.
The thing we struggle with as attorneys, if there's no past due benefits involved, it's very hard to hire a lawyer because people don't have money to pay up front. Steph, you do some pro bono. We all do a little pro bono, sometimes involuntarily pro bono. But
That too.
yeah, you can't stay in business if you're taking cases you're not getting paid on them. So it's hard to sometimes do a lot of that. And then again, some of it is just we just don't get a call for it. Just really don't get a call for it at all. All right. Shub says, go Braves. I appreciate that. Braves are, I think, kind of out of it at this point in terms of the playoffs. But, this is one of these years that the Braves, we kept thinking they're going to turn it around, and they just didn't. I don't know. It didn't happen. How are the Phillies doing?
You're asking me?
Yeah. You have any idea?
Yeah, no.
No. Okay. All right. Jackie Padilla just recently got an X-ray of lumbar degenerative disc S1L5, and I'm also my doctor for MRI. Weakness of my leg and pain. All right, degenerative disc disease is kind of this. We all have it. It's old age. It does, spondylosis. It's not an uncommon thing. Now you're having weakness. That's called radiculopathy in your right leg and pain. That suggests there may be a disc issue. So you're probably not going to win disability on degenerative disc disease. That's just degenerative arthritis that comes with the aging process usually. But I think an MRI would show maybe a herniated disc or something like that. That could change the calculus a little bit. But degenerative disc disease is probably not going to be enough. Miguel.
It'll take you out of heavy work, right? It'll
Yeah,
take you out of
yeah,
heavy
that's
work,
about
maybe
it.
medium work.
Right, not going to list 50 pounds. One of your clients received the medical. This is, we talked about this before, waiting the non-medical. Onset was moved. Okay, so this is one where they changed the onset date. What we want to look at is, did they change it past your date last insured? The other thing, because I'm getting a lot. If you're getting, I'm getting a lot of these where they're approving, where they're changing the onset date. It also depends on.
Now they've been seem to
I'm
have
sorry?
been doing that a lot. A few years now, it seems like they've been doing that. A lot.
Yeah.
Annoying.
The cutback's the best. The other question to ask is, when did you apply? Because if you applied, let's say that you applied in 2024, well, your onset may be 2018, and let's assuming there's no date last insured problem, but let's assume. But if you can only get paid 1 year prior to the date of application, so sometimes it doesn't really help you to go back to the original onset date. The difference in money may be 3 or 4 months, in which case I wouldn't necessarily appeal it. If it's, $30,000 or $40,000, then I probably would tell you we should appeal it. But I do that analysis when I get these letters in. I had one the other day where they cut my client out of over $100,000 of past due benefits. He didn't want to appeal it. No past due benefits at all. He's like, I'm not taking the chance. I'm like, are you sure? $100,000?
Yeah.
Nope.
Was he over 55?
Yeah. Over 55. I'm like, I think we got a good chance. Nope, don't want to do it. Had another one the other day. It was like $5,000. And she decided, no, we're not going to appeal it. It's just, it's not worth it. This is proved at initial recon, I think, but it was a $5,000 difference. And I'm like, look, my feeling is if it's, less than $10,000, you got to really think closely about it. But if it's, more than 10,000, 15,000, might be worth
then
looking.
Look at everything and see, then look at risk, right?
And but you got to look at, I have this whole analysis where you look at the date of application, the date less insured, and I can kind of calculate how much money they'd be looking at after attorney's fees. And like I said, if it's $20,000, then you got to really think about it. If it's $3,000, probably not. So, yeah. But Miguel will take a look at that once I have all the paperwork. I don't see you in I have like a little database of cases that have been approved administratively. And when that gets processed, I'll do the analysis and I'll send you an email. Jackie is 55 years old, 28 years of work. Well, again, lumbar degenerative disc disease is probably on its own not enough. You got to have something more than that. If you've got a disc issue with radiculopathy and you're 55 and a good work history, that starts to sound a little more promising. But
and what's the chance of not having a little bit some other things going on
aside
from your DDD? I mean, is there anything limitations in your shoulder? I always ask people to I have this body chart. My clients know, they're like, gag me. And I have them check off every piece that is if this is not working the way it did when you were 20, there's a reason. And just because it's old age doesn't mean it doesn't count. You
Yeah.
know, you don't have to prove it's from work. You don't have to prove it's from, anything or an accident, you don't have to prove any of that.
Yeah.
So, and it's amazing what they start to realize is got an impairment. And I said, it's not necessarily the one that knocks you out of the job you had, but it's going to prevent
Yeah.
certain jobs. Like, like, well, yeah, I can't, my shoulders hurt if I lift over my head something more than, 15 pounds, to put it on a shelf. Well, there you go. Now go check your shoulders out. And then we got something more to add. And it just seems to help
That's a very good
build
point. I mean,
that.
I think really you have to look at this through the lens of how do we chip away at all the jobs that exist, right? So if you have a bad right shoulder and you're right-handed and you can't lift over shoulder level, that's going to eliminate certain jobs. Okay, if you have balance issues, that's going to eliminate jobs where you're working on unprotected heights. So now we're chipping away those jobs. If you have carpal tunnel in your right dominant hand, that may eliminate jobs where you have fine motor manipulation. Again, it's not going to eliminate every job, but the combined effect of,
Right.
all these different things may be enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got to be provable. And the other thing is, and we've talked about this before, is, you go into a disability case, you got 15 things going on. Yeah, I'm not so sure that I want to do that. I really like to focus on 3 or 4 things, but sometimes those extra 3 or 4, additional things may be enough to disqualify you from other stuff. It just depends on what they are. But yeah, I think it's important to discuss with your attorney all the things that don't work the way they did when you were 20, because you may be so used to living with it, you don't realize it's really a vocationally significant impairment.
Well, we were talking before about things that affect functional limitations being so important, but it needs to be the vocational ones, which
Yeah.
people that, I'll get people who will, one of their impairments is ED,
Mhm.
ED.
Yeah.
And I don't, they'll have it on their list for,
Yeah.
I'm not putting
It
it in there
depends on the
because
job.
unless
Look,
you're
it
going to be
depends
a
on the job.
gigolo.
If you're a porn star, then I think ED would be potentially a vocational issue. But other you set me up so well. I had to say it. Come on, I had to
Well,
say
that's
it.
what I was, when we were talking about it before, I started giggling because I'm like, I see it not infrequently. And I'm like, okay, I get
What
it. I
job
know
did you have?
what's that?
Yeah. What job
Yeah.
did you have?
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
no,
Well, they don't, because they don't know, like nobody's thinking. And it was kind of a good point you brought up about because I usually talk about your functional limitations.
yeah.
Um, Although in that part of the question, and it's part of I think the 3368, when it just says list your, how does it word it? Does it say list your disabilities or does it say
Mhm.
list your impairments that would affect work? I don't know that it says that. I don't know. I have to go
Yeah.
look. But I'm like, and I
But
know it affects self-esteem and stuff like that. So
I
then
was
they'll be
going to
like,
say,
it makes me
right.
like feel like crap and
Right.
depressed. And
Self-esteem, depression. I've had clients, tell me that they have not, had marital relations with a spouse for 2 years. It's causing a lot of stress on the marriage. It's causing
yeah,
depression. That
which
can be
doesn't
a
help
vocation.
the other health things. Yeah.
Right. Right. So
But
it's
then I say,
that,
then we're going to go with the depression and you're
yeah.
going to go to a therapist so we
Yeah.
can get that medically documented that there's depression.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But that can be, that certainly can be an issue. I mean, we kind of make light of it, but it really can be an issue there.
it definitely can be. It's
Yeah.
just not for the reason that they're thinking
Right.
precisely. Yeah.
All right. Eunice is 55, worked as a sailor. That's a, we don't see a lot of sailors. It's kind of interesting. For 30 years, have a slip disc. Now, again, slip disc is not a medical term. I mean, is it a herniated disc? Is it a bulging disc? Is it, what exactly does that mean? Cannot return to the work you used to do. Okay. So no past relevant work, can't lift 20 pounds, walk half an hour. So you're describing a grid rule case. You're 55, you can't do past work, and you're limited to less than light exertional capacity. You would meet the grid rule, in my opinion, or likely meet the
So
grid rule.
the job is get the medical evidence that makes that really clear.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
it's reality. So now you have to, Eunice, work that up.
Yep.
Your
All right,
big
Jim,
job.
and we're getting about another 10 minutes or so. Jim, isn't it true the records we submit that are scanned and discarded if something is lost or missing, then it's on us? I mean, they do. It is paperless, and one thing you may not be aware of, Jim and others, is that there are two parts to your file. There's the actual exhibit file. Then there's kind of another part that is sort of a non-exhibited file that contains other things that Social Security is deemed not relevant. So, I would tell you that anything you submit, keep a copy of it, because as an attorney, I can look and we can see what they've got. We can see both what they've got in the exhibited part, which is fairly easy to do, and the unexhibited part, which is a little more difficult. You can still see it. If something is missing, and I don't usually see that things are missing, we can resubmit it. But to answer your question, yeah, if it's submitted and they lose it, unless you can prove they got it and lost it, you're going to want to resubmit it. But I don't. Do you see them? I mean, if we submit it electronically, or if they get it and we see they've got it, they don't usually lose it after that.
No, they definitely don't. But I have seen, like, it was an OP case that I don't really take those, but I did take this one over COVID, overpayment case. And it was a paper file, and we had to fax.
Mm-hmm.
And I was faxing it to the OHO, so it wasn't even to a scanning fax per se.
Right. OHO is the hearing office. Yeah.
It was the hearing office, and nothing was getting where it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
It was a chip Joe. It was terrible. I mean, everything worked out in the end, but thank God it was an overpayment case, really,
Yeah.
But it was frustrating. It was really frustrating because it was just not the same as the normal course. And these paper files, I think, I cannot stand.
Yeah, no, fortunately, we don't have too many of them left. But
but sometimes sometimes the ERE will suddenly say no access because this is a paper file, and I'm like, what does that mean and why? We just filed this.
I know.
So I don't.
Yeah. Well, one of the people who had posed a question before, we had that problem in his case. They wouldn't process electronically, and it's just finally now they are finally, but on a new case. But yeah, it's a really frustrating type of thing. All right, got time for a couple more questions. All right, this is a good question. Lulu's, LA Lulu, probably from LA. All right. Is it advisable to submit a brief of medical records and repeat routine visits, drown out more pertinent evidence? If so, can pro se claimant self-submit it in an attempt? Sure. I mean, I think that if you want to highlight medical evidence in a memo or a brief or whatever, absolutely go ahead and do that. And again, this is where maybe using an AI tool like Notebook LM or the paid version of ChatGPT could be of value to you. But yeah, the more you can clarify things, the better. And certainly, I think an adjudicator would be open to having somebody, cut through the clutter. So yeah, I think absolutely. Would not tell somebody not to do that. Again, just be aware that anything you put in there, is there anything that could come back to haunt you?
If you're just pointing out like good things in the records, you're having them focus on that, impinged cord or whatever, which they should find anyway, but it doesn't hurt you to point it out. And then, I think it's not a bad idea.
Okay.
Because your attorney would do it, or many of us anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Annie Shenanigans, 20 pounds, and we're talking about 20 pounds. It's the weight of a carry-on suitcase. And again, it depends on what's in the carry-on suitcase. But yeah, that's about right. I mean, I think most regular suitcases are about 40, 45 pounds a carry-on. And so, could you think about it like that way? If you had a full carry-on that weighed 20 pounds, could you reach overhead, get it into the overhead bin and get it down? Or do you need help with that? Could you
do it for a third of a day? That's like 2-3 hours. That's 20 minutes of every hour. And it drives me crazy when the SSA just doesn't acknowledge the strain of that amount of time.
Yep. All right. Tommy says, would like to spend some time out of the country for the winter. Would be able to do video appointments to psychologists and psychiatrists, assuming treating doctors. What do you think? That's a factor. I mean, certainly if the doctor's willing to see you, virtually, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with virtual appointments. That they're more common now. I think the bigger question is that, if you're spending time out of the country, you'll have to explain, did you have any trouble during travel? Did you have any, what physically or mentally did you have to do when you were there? You're out of a normal routine, and that Social Security doesn't see it that often, where somebody who's under active treatment is spending time 3 or 4 months out of the country. So you just have to explain it. And maybe there's perfectly good explanation. You're going to stay with family in Costa Rica, or you're going to stay with family wherever they happen to be, or in Canada. It's just cheaper. It's better for you mentally to do that. Fine. I don't think it's a problem. It's just, you just have to, if, let's say, you're claiming you have back pain, which I don't know that you are, but let's say you were, and you got to ride in a car for 12 hours, well, that's got to be just explained. So, I think as long as you're seeing your doctor and the doctor's willing to do it by virtual means, I don't have a problem with it. And again, I'm saying, to me, it wouldn't be something I would discourage my client from doing, especially if there was a good reason for them to be, with family or whatever out of the country. I was a server for Noon consecutive years, didn't earn work credits, claim my tips. SSI is this number significant. So for the year, you're earning $1,500. That's not going to move the meter at all. That's way less than SGA. So, SGA, $1,500, that's below SGA for this year, certainly. I guess it's pretty close to it for last year, but for per month. But I'm not sure if you're saying the whole year, $1,500, but that's well.
It sounds like the whole year, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, both years.
Yeah. Tommy says cold climates make me depressive. Okay, so it's mental health. Yeah, and again, that's a legitimate reason to escape the cold. If you're leaving, Buffalo and you're going to a warmer climate, that's a logical, reasonable thing to do. Again, a judge is going to recognize that any travel is going to be stressful. Are you getting on a plane? Are you driving? You may have to explain that, but I don't think that it is, improper to do something that will make you better. And if that going to a warmer climate does that, then yeah.
I think it would be helpful to know too, and if you're seeing family, and family can be a good support structure, perhaps, like if that's an element of that, versus you're going with the girlfriend and you're, you know what I mean, staying in a resort, or
Yep.
It really kind of depends on what you're doing there and who you're with.
Yep.
Or maybe you're just going by yourself and you're going to be alone. Like it depends on the issue, but I think that would be kind of important too. Perhaps.
Yeah, I think these are just questions that they would ask. That's what we're asking them. I'll get time for a couple more. Is a disabled person with autism? Again, I'll just stop you right there. You don't win it with a diagnosis. So let's say you've been approved for autism, and you're working intermittently. How much are you earning? How often do you work? Have you been flagged to be reviewed? How old are you? There's a lot of incomplete information here, but being approved under autism does not, mean yes or no in terms of being reviewed. And I think the term permanently, there's no permanent disability given that Social Security can review it and cut you off. So, if you're asking, is that going to prevent you from ever being reviewed? No, it will not. It will not. And working intermittently may or may not create a problem for you. Okay, so Annie agrees that it's not logical to own a motorcycle you don't ride. I had one, but it got too bad, I sold it. Okay, so this is going back to my client and about the motorcycle. So that's her opinion. I think that's what the judge felt as well. All right, Christina says hello to Stephanie. Okay.
Hi, Christina.
Okay. Driver's license, a motorcycle endorsement. I guess these are questions we talked about the motorcycle. Yeah, I think if they're not going to look at your driver's license, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Right. Annie, Mrs. writing. Yeah, do you ever? I've never. I mean, I've ridden on them as a passenger. I've never actually driven a motorcycle. Have you?
No, I was I was studying to get my motorcycle license when I found out I was pregnant with my first, so I tossed
Nope.
it and I said, I'm not
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
and now I don't feel competent. So, 20 years later, I don't feel like I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
do a safe
Yeah.
job. So,
Okay. All right. So Miguel is giving us an endorsement here. Okay.
super sweet.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, KU Thunder. Okay. So we're going to take a couple of more of these. Naomi or Noemi. I'm Noemi.
Naomi
Naomi, I'm not sure. Naomi Cruz had a hearing on May 29th. The judge wants another hearing for October. What does this mean? It just means the judge, wanted either to bring a medical expert in, which is fairly typical, or new information came in, or there's something that was not discussed in the prior hearing. So it's rare, but not unheard of. I've had a couple this year, second hearings.
Yeah,
and we,
me too.
We won. So that's always a good thing. Okay. Let's see. Dimple, who's got a great name, Dimple Bellamy from Ohio. Says,
Hey, Dimple.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to get two more of these before we have to go, since we're at 2 hours. Jeffrey Whitfield, good evening. How would you view a case for a 50-year-old, no work history in the past 5 years, long history of bilateral varicose veins and chronic venous insufficiency confirmed by ultrasound? Well, I think one thing that Stephanie's dogs think have an opinion about it, because I can hear them barking.
I would think that these things shut that out, but apparently
Yeah,
they
I
don't.
guess not. All right. So I would say this. You got to choose an onset date. And again, if you haven't worked in 5 years, maybe your onset date was 2, 3, 4 years ago. So maybe you got to make sure you're within your date last insured. But again, you're 50 now. So if your onset, you were less than 50, that's potentially an issue. So I think one thing I would tell you to find out is your date last insured for Title II disability. Was it after your 50th birthday? Okay. If it was, then you got the grid rules could come into play. That could really help you. If it's not, if you were, date last insured, you were 48 or 49, it's going to be more of an uphill battle. Having the bilateral varicose veins and venous insufficiency, what does that mean in terms of your functioning? Does it stop you from, standing and walking? Does it mean you have to have your feet extended? What are the practical issues? But if you were over 50 before your date last insured, you could possibly make an argument you're limited to no more than sedentary work, and you meet the grids, one of the 201 grids. So that's the way I see this. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. All the above.
Yeah.
So much is important there.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So we'll make this. All right. And he said that record say prolonged standing, how's that defined? As sedentary. Well, again, that's one of those weasel words, prolonged. I don't know. Is because 2 hours or less, limits you to sedentary. More than 2 hours puts you at light. So you need to find out from the doctor what is prolonged. Is it less than 2 hours or more than 2 hours? That's the break point for Social Security. Okay, let's get one more here, and then we'll call it a night. Tip Weatherspoon. Good evening. I'm in Recon, stage 4. Can you tell me what's next? Well, stage 4 doesn't mean anything. It's just sort of that part of that my Social Security thing. But the next thing is, normally it takes about 7, 8, 9 months to get a decision. If you're denied, you request a hearing. So that's what that means. The next thing would be a hearing. So Recon is going back to the state agency, the same people who denied you before, and you're going to be having another adjudicator take a look at it. That's all that means, right? There's nothing else that can mean.
And what do you think about those stages that they tell them about? Sometimes it's clearly not the stages in the sequential evaluation process at the DDS.
Yep.
Stage 4, she might actually be back at the field office.
Yeah, could be.
And just hasn't gotten the notice, because when they talk about step 4, I don't think they tell you when they do step 3. You kind of know when you're in step 3, right? It's that long time of everything. Yeah. But step 4 or 5 is like bing bing.
Yep. Yep. Well, I would just say this. I personally think that all the stuff you see on your My Social Security statement take it with a big grain of salt. It's not official anything. It's just, I think they do it to kind of keep people calmed down. I don't think it really means a whole heck of a lot. So anyway, all right. So we got a couple of nice comments from Karen and from Muley. Really appreciate that. We're gonna we're at 2 hours and 4 minutes. We're gonna end it right now. Steph, hang on for a sec, but I'm gonna end the live stream. But everybody, thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.